Well, hello and welcome along to another edition of the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn, and I'm delighted to be joined by one of the hairiest men in show business, the wonderful Tim McArthur. How are you, Tim?
Hello. I quite like that introduction. I have to say that always makes me giggle. If you could see me naked now, not that you want to, I'm just putting it out there. I am even more hairier, especially my back. And I tell you, my back waxer, my lovely Rosalie, who's been waxing me for about 20 years, when we eventually come out of lockdown, she can get her hands on me. She will have a field day. I swear there'll be enough
in the forest,
excess body hair to a blind jumper. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't see because I'm wearing a polo neck, but under here now, it's like a jungle. Anyway, enough of that. Hello, everyone.
No, hello, everyone. Indeed. Well, I tell you what, the last time I saw you, very kindly invited me onto your show, your fantastic show with Jonathan Hansler, and we came along, and you were wearing these little tank tops. I could see how hairy you were. So, hair sprouting everywhere. So it's got to be
absolutely. Good. I mean, I think that might have been the summertime, and when we were allowed to go out and be
socialised.
Oh, no, isn't it strange to think about?
Yeah,
not in a tank top in this weather, but isn't it weird to think though as well, when you think about like when we first met, when you came in on my show, how that seems just like another world away where we are in the world. Just we were in that small little studio, the three of us, well, four of us with Melis as well, who's driving, and you just think that seems like, it just seems, I look at pictures now of like hugging friends or people being in tight venues watching a comedy night or a show.
Yeah.
And you just think that seems a world away.
And the other thing as well, Tim, that's happened is it made us reevaluate the stuff which is really important in our lives. And it is simple things like talking to friends, even having a hug every now and again. All those things are out the window, aren't they?
I know. And it's just, it's sort of really also, I think the underestimation of human touch, I think has been really fascinating. I mean, I have got some friends who are not into even a handshake anymore or a hug. Some of my friends are like, oh, I don't like being hugged. But I think for majority of people, just that connection of that physical touch, I think is being really, really missed. And it'd be interesting to see when we're allowed out, just what sort of form of social contact will come back, whether people will shake hands at a business meeting or whether everyone will elbow, when they meet somebody, especially if it's a new person. It's going to be a really fascinating, I think, change in public interaction.
Yeah, well, I hope some of the good things that come out of it will be where people reevaluate what's important in life. I mean, it was that wonderful Banksy picture where you had the child and they had a bin full of Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman were all cast away in the bin, and the child was playing with the NHS nurse as the new superhero. I thought that sort of encapsulated our change of priorities, and all the people who are at home at the moment trying to do school teaching, that sort of side, and having the difficulties they've got of having their children 24/7. I think the appreciation for teachers has also gone through the roof, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I think children and NHS workers, oh my goodness me, and everyone on the front line, you just think, oh, I wouldn't like to be in your shoes. And you see the news reports, which are just harrowing. And I live near the Whittington Hospital. And whenever I go shopping, I'll walk past the Whittington, and I always think about, what is going on in there. And just, there's always been rows of ambulances outside, especially more in this recent third wave, as I think we're in, really. Yeah. It's been horrific.
It is a nightmare. And one of the things that people miss when they're not going to school is the sort of enthusiasm which you get in a classroom and so on and so forth. And I think particularly it's that sort of social thing, and mental health, which I know you and I are big advocates of making sure the spotlight is shone on it. So let us be the generation that talks about mental health, so the next generation don't suffer stigma. And I think it's really important. And it goes back. Yeah, it goes back to the early days, doesn't it? I mean, your love of theatre, I mean, you were talking recently about, actually, it goes back a little while because your brother actually discovered a scrapbook, which you started keeping when you were 11, where you were cutting out little things about the theatres, even from the Sun, and you would put it in this scrapbook. Talk to me about those early days for you and the love of theatre.
Yeah, that scrapbook was amazing when I found that. because it was just when my brother, it was just like that whole interest of when I first got interested in theatre, you know, and even the Telegraph, I think, used to always do a listings of everything that was on in the West End. It was near towards the back of the paper, and I used to look at it every day and see what shows were opening, what shows had been announced they were closing. You know, I just became obsessed. But I also think, looking back now, I think all of that was a bit of escapism for me with what was going on in my childhood. And I sort of that I just lived and breathed and just focused on my love of theatre. Really, it just helped me out in so many times.
And you talk about being escapism. What was going on in your childhood?
So I was severely bullied at school because I was interested in theatre was the main thing. I think that was the trigger. And then also I realised that I was gay as well. So I came out when I was 15, and which, you know, in Section 28 under Thatcher was not the right time to come out at all, you know, because you had to be 21 and the schools weren't allowed to help anybody. So they sent me to a child psychotherapist called Ronald McDonald or Donald McRonald. I can never remember which name his name was which way around it was. And it was just a horrendous time. And I told two people that I was at school with who I thought were friends, and basically they one of them told one person, of course, and then it just went wild. It just went around the school, and I was just, you know, and it comes back to our first conversation because I went through puberty when I was very young. So of course I was advanced in the rest of the boys in my year. You know, I was, you know, I had pubic hair when I was 10. You know, so it was quite an early development for me. So there was that as well, and then all my hormones were going crazy, and then having to deal with this sort of constant bullying, which it was horrific, but it made me, you know, stronger in lots of ways. And even at that time, I remember thinking, how can I make this work for me? What do I do to make this less painful? Because obviously, you know, being called pufter and faggot, it was all true, but I was never going to admit it to them and go, well, yes, I am, because it would have just made it, you know, and having like, you know, I was in 4th or 5th year or something, and having like a second year, you know, shout faggot at me, you know, was not the most. So I just thought, how am I going to make it work? And basically I told a massive lie. And I said I'd been nightclubbing in Newcastle, and I'd been dancing on a podium, and an owner of a nightclub had come up to me and said, "You're a great dancer, do you want a job?" And so instead of getting called pufter, kids used to sing to me, "I was a male stripper in a go-go bar, I was a male stripper in a go-go bar," which, you know, that made me laugh inside, because I just thought, oh my God, you will believe anything. I could say I was related to Bruce Forsyth, or do you know what I mean? There was, I mean, as an example, I'm not, but do you know what I mean? It was like that gullibility, if that's a word, of how children would believe anything. But them singing to me, "I was a male stripper in a go-go bar," was my saviour. And of course, because of Section 28, the school, none of the teachers were allowed to help me, because they could lose their jobs, because it was seen as promoting homosexuality. Hence why they sent me to the child psychotherapist. And then years later, I went back to the school to see a neighbour in a production, and all the teachers that were there that had taught me apologised to me.
All of them did. How did that?
And said how sorry they were.
And it must have been awful, because in amongst the percentages, I think there must have been some teachers who themselves were gay. And
yeah,
they
my English teacher was.
The difficulties that you were going through in that environment, when your body's changing, you feel as though you're different, you feel as though you're nobody else there to support you. They try and treat it as an illness, which is crazy.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, my English teacher, actually, I remember him.
What did he just said years later?
They just said they were really sorry how they could see how I was being treated, and I was the topic of many conversations in the staff room and discussions of how they weren't allowed to help or to say it was okay to be gay. And my English teacher, I remember Mr. Berry, he really apologized, because he said to me he was gay, and there was nothing he could see at all, and there was nothing he could do. And he said, you know, he apologized from the bottom of his heart, you know, which was, it was, I wouldn't say it was a closure thing, because I didn't blame the teachers at all. It was the system, you know, it was the influence of Section 28.
And talking about that, I mean, you're sent along to a psychiatrist to what, to cure you? What was the intention? You seem to have frozen a bit.
I think it was just, oh,
yeah, so
yes,
there's a little
again,
bit of a delay, like often happens on these sort of connections. It's not me being rude and talking over you. I think there's a little bit of a delay which you freeze. But
no, I know.
I was touching on the point that Section 28, a different era, and thank goodness we've moved on a little bit. We'll come on to how far, but that sort of time when everybody, you thought you might be alone, you're going through those difficult times, they treat it as though it's an illness. They say it's a psychological thing. Let's send him along, I don't know, to be fixed. What was the intention?
I think it was to fix me, really, or to sort of to say, you know, and up until that point, because I'd always had girlfriends. I'd always been as well, you know, like from the age of, I don't know, 11, I'd always gone out with girls, and always girls who were a bit older than me, which, you know, it's another story, Andrew. That's another story. But
well, no,
yeah,
tell that story. No, you can tell that story. Tell that story as well. I've got to be so many. I know your life, so I know when you say that's another story. I've got to get it in there. We can always come back to it. Otherwise, I'll be crossing away. What's the other story about you and the girls when you're a youngster?
I always had older girlfriends, which was just yeah, and for some reason, you know, I was attracted to them and they were attracted to me. I think it was because mentally I was maybe a little bit more mature in my head than the other guys that were my age. Yeah, and I'm still in touch with a couple of them today, actually, after all this time, and they always say to me, I knew there was just something, you know, why I could talk to you, or what it was.
You had all that. I mean, if there's a stereotype about love of musical theatre, and you saw your first Sondheim at 1987 when you were 12, the Follies. I mean, all that sort of passion. And I know you are a passionate guy. You're passionate about theatre. You've got your scrapbook. If people are looking for a stereotypical thing, they sort of turn around and say, well, hang about, yes, of course there's that characteristic, and work on that premise. So I can see from the attraction from the girls' point of view, because you could have sensible conversations about the arts and your love of musical theatre and so on and so forth. So you can see the attraction. And from your side, you were getting people a bit more mature because you were more intelligent than probably a lot of your contemporaries. You could have that sensible discussion, couldn't you?
Yeah, I think also that was a shock when I went to drama school, and I was like, you know, with other people in my class, and they were going, "You're straight and you like musicals," you know. Again, so this my stereotypical of like how people should be in theatre. I was like,
yeah,
"You're not gay? Oh my god, you like girls, and you like Andrew Lloyd Webber, and you love Jerry Herman." You know, this part of me, I'm like, really?
Right. So that sort of interesting stage. But they then
that should be an elitist thing.
So the school, however, they turned around and thought that this is what they're going to try and do. They're going to send you around, as you say, to fix you. Talk me through some of the first session when you went in to see this person. Who were they? A man, a woman? How did the conversation start?
So it was a guy called Donald McDonald. And basically he just said, and because obviously I was being bullied and I was very depressed as well, and it was just the whole thing. And he just said, oh, well, you know, well, you say you're gay. And I was like, yes, I'm gay. Well, how do you know you're gay? And I'm like, well, I feel I'm attracted to men. And he was like, in what way? And I was like, well, because I know. And the thing was, you know, at that time, I was sort of fooling around with someone I was at school with as well. And I think because I was a one-parent family, I thought that if I had said that I was actually engaging in sexual acts with another boy, you know, they could have put me into care. And I think that was my main focus, to actually not actually know why that I you know, I preferred to have sex with a man than I would with a woman, and therefore I would, you know, I was gay. I remember as well, my mum, I don't know if you can remember this, Andrew, but there used to be catalogues like Brian Mills and Empire Stores that were catalogues that were delivered
half
to
rainforest,
my
half
mum.
rainforest. There used to be, absolutely.
Yeah, half a rainforest. You know, and I noticed that as I was a massive Lego fan. So whenever the new Empire Stores catalogue would arrive, or Brian Mills, I would look at the toy department and I'd be like, what new Lego is out? But then as I went through puberty and became aware of men, you know, it would be like the Lego or the men's underwear section. And I slowly realised that as time went on, the men's underwear section became the priority when the new catalogue arrived on the mat. So it was little things like that, you know, I would say to him and say, well, this is, you know, I'm not looking at the bras, I'm looking at the men in the underwear. So it was, and I think the fascinating thing was I saw him for about 18 months in the final sort of year and a half at school. And I always arranged to go and see him when we had PE or games or, you know, physical education. So I didn't have to be in that male environment, especially the showers afterwards, because, you know, there was a games teacher as well who used to comment on me. So, and then the times when he couldn't see me, I just used to nick off and say to the school that I was seeing him because I couldn't cope with that. So again, that then sort of made me have a sort of phobia of sports or not liking sports, you know, and I find, especially this pandemic of what we've been through in the past 12 months, I don't know about you, but it's given me time to reflect on a lot of things that have happened to me and really sort of really knuckle down on where that insecurity really has come from. What has been the main reason? For example, you know, sports, why I don't like sports is because of that moment doing sports at school, in the changing room afterwards, and being picked on by this teacher for whatever reason in front of all, and it becoming like a male dominant, aggressive environment. And that, I think, little things like that, I'm now going, that's where that comes from. So who knows, maybe this pandemic in some ways has maybe been good for people, some people, to maybe really look at their individual issues, personal issues, and why they behave the way they behave and why they react to things. I don't know.
But you're right, this sort of hurt. I mean, it basically accumulates over a number of years, and you can go back and look at those moments, and it's clear, as you say, why you didn't like sport, because that was another opportunity for the bullies, not just your contemporaries in your class, but your teachers as well, that humiliating you in front of people. So it's easy, as you say, stop and you have these moments to think. You can see that's the catalyst. You mentioned you were in a relationship at the time.
Yeah.
The partner you were in a relationship with at that time when you were at school, was it public knowledge that he was also gay?
No, it was completely secret.
Did you talk to him about it?
Not really. Not really. I mean, no one really knew. So, and it was a very, yeah, no one knew about it.
So how did the relationship start?
And that was the way it was.
So how, there's a bit of delay, as we say, with the feed, but
Just sort of fooling around.
But how,
Yeah.
how did it start? I mean, you were what,
just fooling around.
Right, and it sort of developed into a relationship later.
Yeah. Yeah, and then as it sort of intensified, the bullying, then it just sort of stopped because they didn't want to be seen with me or associated with me. So, you know, and the other thing, of course, that was really happening at that time was the AIDS pandemic was really starting, or was starting to gather, you know, pace as well. So, you know, I was at school. I left. When did I leave? 1991. So all that late 80s, you know, he had the "Don't Die of Ignorance" campaign on the telly. So that was associated with gay men and, you know, and having sex with animals, which was just ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? So there was all that as well, tarnished in being gay or what it was like to be gay, you know. So as well as that going on, there was a part of me that became just completely scared of actually having sex because I thought I was going to get AIDS and die.
And there was that huge amount of ignorance. I mean, it's a fantastic series on at the moment, It's a Sin. It's highlighting a lot of the ignorance and that sort of side where, but you can come to, when you then went off to theatre school, to Mount View, but where actually there must have been more like-minded, but more people who were openly gay when you went into that environment. Is that what you found?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it was the dream, you know, to go to drama school and be there and doing what I'd been so passionate about. And, you know, and I was so lucky because I was only 17 when I started. And I was supposed to I did 1 year after leaving school at a BTEC, and then I got glandular fever and I was supposed to play Judas in Godspell, and then obviously I couldn't do it, so my parents came in, my mum came in the room and said, oh, here's the stage newspaper in Mount View are auditioning. Why don't you go and just test the water for next year? And not expecting to get in, and I got in. So there I was, you know, like moving to London when I was like 17 and a half. And, you know, so I was like in London, gay capital of the world in my brain, and about to study musical theatre and hopefully become an actor. So it was, you know, it was such like and to leave where I was from and all that negative bullying, and then to be hopefully accepted in and to have a career of what I really wanted to do.
It must have been, as you say, this was your golden moment to shine and to be yourself. Had you already come out to your mother at that stage?
Yes. Well, my mother brought me out, if that makes sense. She knew. She said to me, she said, oh, let's, you know, you've not been very happy. And she said, I think you're gay, aren't you? And I was just like, yes. And then she was like, go and have a shave and let's go out for a bar meal.
And how old were you at that stage?
I was 15.
So, I mean, really, to have a parent like that who is so embracing it,
Yeah.
it's great because you see, I mean, even in It's a Sin, you see where there was a lot of prejudice, parents who deliberately, because there was that whole scaremongering thing, that people didn't want their children to be gay. And they were often treated very, very badly. For people watching at the moment who are struggling in a similar situation, even though we have moved on as a society, it's still very difficult for a lot of people, and there's still a certain mindset. What would you say to them about coming out to your parents?
You've got to feel right about it and be, I think, prepared for what reaction they might give you. You know, I think I was incredibly lucky, but I'd had a special bond with my mum because my dad had died when I was 9. So, and then my brother moved away the year after. So for a good 5 years, it was just me and my mum on our own together. So we supported each other in that. I don't want to use the word bubble, but I'm using the word bubble.
You're always ahead of your time, Tim.
So it was,
it's gonna be good.
Yeah. So we you know, we had that connection and that bond. And, you know, I remember her saying to me over some scampi and chips, you know, she said, it's a very lonely life being gay. And, you know, I just want you to be happy. And it's probably not what I would have chosen for you, but you're my son and I love you. And you've always got to be able to talk to me. And that was it. So, you know, so I feel incredibly lucky.
Oh no, absolutely. Was she aware that she had gay friends? Did she have other members of the family who were gay, that she could approach it in such a compassionate and understanding way?
Well, my brother is gay. So I think she's sort of seen a couple of the similar signs, even though there's quite an 8-year age gap between us. You know, I think there was a time as well that I think she probably blamed herself a little bit, that she had 2 gay sons, but I was like, it's nothing to do with you at all. You know, I don't really think there's genetic. I've really not, you know, I've got other friends who've got gay brothers and sisters, but then I've got other friends that, you know, they're the only gay in the family. So I don't, you know, I think it's just what you're attracted to. But then I think sexuality is such a complex subject as well. I think it's really interesting of how, you know, you can sort of, I don't know. I think sex is who you fancy is an interesting debate on lots of times, and whether you're supposed to be the same sexuality all your life, or what happens, is it a connection with someone, you know.
And
I think
scientists
it's
are
about
for
open.
ages looking at it, and I think it's the hardship is when they look at it as an illness, and as you say, those days are trying to get you fixed, because that is it's not about fixing. I think more people are, and a lot of that prejudice. I mean, there's always prejudice about people being different, whether it's different religion, different race, different sexuality, all that sort of side, and it's also embedded in fear. And you're right, at that sort of stage when the AIDS epidemic was at its height, there was fear everywhere. And what people fear is one of the most driving factors in any society. But you talk about
Yeah.
your brother as well. Did you have the discussions with him about coming out, and how did he react and support you?
Yeah, I did. I went to the payphone at the end of the road and phoned him when he used to have a payphone, you know, and
Those were the
sunning,
days
and
you
I
had
just
the little coins and they kept running out. Yes, I
said, "Oh, you know, I think." He said, "Yeah, I think." I went, "Oh, I think I'm gay," and there was this silence on the phone. Then he went, "Are you?" And I went, "Yeah," and he said, "How do you know?" And I told him, and he went, he said, "I've been waiting for this." And he went, "I'm gay," and I went, "Are you? How do you know?"
oh,
And then,
right,
and
you
then, but you
didn't
know,
know.
we both,
You
you know, we
didn't know
both have
he
a
was.
really,
Yeah, you didn't know he was gay before then. And there's an
no,
8 year difference.
yeah. Again, because I'd seen him with, like, he'd always had beautiful women around him. You know, growing up when he was at college, you know, I remember thinking, "Oh, she's a really hot lady," you know, and it just didn't come into my mind that my big brother, might be a big old gay as well. You know, we're very close. We are incredibly close.
It's good. I mean, because
You
your
know,
brother must have. What's your brother called?
Alistair.
So did Alistair? Did he ever talk to you about how he came out and spoke to your mother?
Not really. We've never really had that conversation. And I don't know whether it was maybe not, I wouldn't say easier for my mum to, you know, I think because she'd obviously been through it with Alistair, then she could see the signs that I was displaying, really. Um, but yeah, but I do, looking back now, I do feel very lucky that I did have the parents. You know, my stepfather was, you know, incredibly supportive and lovely man. Um, so yeah, on that side of my life, I do feel very lucky. You know.
So that was the sort of blessed side, if you like, is that you had a strong, supportive family. 17, you get into Mountview, you sort of turn around and think, hang about, this is going to be my moment now. I can be the real Tim McArthur. I'm going to be surrounded by like-minded people who don't mind about my sexuality, actually will embrace it. It's almost compulsory on certain courses. And you look on that sort of thing, but it didn't quite work out that way, did it?
No, it didn't. It did it was going all right for the first couple of terms, and then it just sort of. I think with any sort of, you know, Mountview is an amazing school, and they've amazing performers have come from Mountview, and it wasn't. I don't think it's. I think it's whatever. For me, it was just the people who were there at that time, the people in charge. And there's also some wonderful teachers that I worked with and I'm still in touch with, actually, that have still been supportive to me 20 years on from leaving. So You know, this is not like a slagging off Mount View fest. Do you know what I mean? Because
Well,
it's a
I
good
say
school.
it's a
But I think it was,
fantastic institution. It's produced many great artists. The teaching there is superb. Give us some of the main wonderful artists who've come out of Mount View.
oh God, Helen Hobson, Matthew Rawle, Julie Etherton, Kurt Jameson, director. I think he was there. Do you know what I mean? There's quite a lot of, you
Tim
know, and that's why I
McArthur. Tim
went.
McArthur came out as well. I remember him. It's going to be good. But no,
Yeah.
it's a great.
You know, I remember like,
but there was,
yeah, and I remember when I went to see shows.
Yeah, but there was a dark,
Yeah, there was a dark side.
side.
I think,
and I think this is the thing which is sort of touched on, and you've just suddenly
yeah, there
realised
was.
in lockdown where you suddenly realise that actually this sort of what you call a tsunami of emotion, when you have that realization that going from the bullying at school at 17, you were hoping to escape, and yes, you got some great people and some wonderful talents, and the classes and everything else were great, but there was still a bullying culture. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, there was. So basically, in my final year, I'd had really bad casting all year, and I remember thinking, why have I had such bad casting? And I went to see the head of acting, and he just said to me, basically, the reason why you've had bad casting is because you will never ever work in British theatre. You're extremely untalented. And I remember sort of that feeling of going like, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry here. And I remember just walking out of his office, and I remember just leaving the school I was seeing at the time because I had a key, and I thought he was going to be at work, and I just opened the front door, and I just remember collapsing in the hallway and like sobbing uncontrollably. And I didn't know, but he was actually off work sick, and he was there, so he comforted me. But and then and then the sort of the rest of my time there, I think we had about 2 months left to go, and the final show was we did Into the Woods, which was Sondheim, which was my favorite musical ever. And we had this amazing American director called John Sheehan. And, at the end of the production, we had like a last night party thing. And I was working front of house on Phantom selling ice creams. So the week after we finished, he had this party for us. And I wasn't going to go. And then I arrived, and one of the girls opened the doors and said, "Tim, you're here. John's been waiting for you all night." And I remember sort of sitting in the garden, can't remember whatever party flat it was, talking to John, smoking a cigarette. And he just said to me, "You've had a really bad time at this school, haven't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have." And he just said, "They told me not to give you any attention in rehearsals, or to give you any, to not focus on you." And I said to them, don't tell me what to do. I'm a professional director. I will give everybody the time." And he basically just said to me, "Don't worry, you'll be fine. You'll work, just enjoy the next month, just get what you can out of it. And, all will be well." And I think it was just that. And then I looked back at, other times that happened to me within those years of training, and I could see things, and I remember things that happened, just little tiny things from other teachers or other guest directors, and then it just all fell into place. And the reason why I was asked to interview somebody on my radio show that I do all about theatre, the Curtain Up Show, and it was one of the guest directors that had bullied me. And so this tsunami, just hearing his name, I just went straight back into the rehearsal room with him. How he, made me feel in front of my peers. And I think the thing is, Andrew, because I was bullied so much when I was younger, I recognize those feelings of being bullied instantly. My body has that reaction to it. And it just sort of dawned on me, really. So even though he was a bully, but the main person who gave a bully to be a bully was the then head of acting. And it was and the other thing that was really hard, the head of acting sadly passed away last year. And on Facebook, everyone was singing his praises. What a marvelous teacher he was, what a marvelous this and it was. And I just had to, I had to really like sellotape my fingers together, because I really have had a lasting impact on me now, today, 25 years later, which is why, you know, mental health wise, you know, this business is tough. It's also fantastic, but it's sometimes I think when I just think I don't fit in this business, I'm not meant to be in this business. And why I look back and I think at times I felt like a fraud. And now I can say all those feelings, all that comes from that time and that reaction, how it made me feel.
And that's the problem, isn't it, Tim, is that people sometimes don't realize what a devastating effect bullying, or whether they're making a joke on your behalf. And even if it's, we call it the joke cloak, because they want to be, ha ha ha, you're never going to make anything. There's no excuse for it. When you turn around and you have brave people such as yourself coming out and saying, this is how it's affected me all these years later. And if people stop and thought about what they say or what they do and the impact that it has, we're going to be in a better position for the future, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think if you're in a position of power, you know, and we all have our opinions. I'm not saying that we all like who we like. That's a fact of life. It's not about that, you know, and what you like, I might not like in a piece of music, what you write in a book, I might not. And we have that about performers. I understand all that. But when you're in a position where you're supposed to be nurturing a group of people, whether you think they're talented or not, you still have to give that person that amount of time, because you never know. You know, the industry is about luck. It is about talent. It's been in the right place at the right moment. It's been about who you know. It's all those things that make it work. I don't think now it's just having one of those things. It's about everything. That's just my personal opinion on it. But I really, and when I have taught, well, not taught, when I directed, you know, I made sure that I give, and even when I direct shows now, I think that the rehearsal room has to be the safest place. You've got to be safe in that rehearsal room. If you've got actors that don't feel comfortable, they're not going to be their best, because they're going to be worrying that they don't feel secure. They don't feel that they can explore, they can develop things, they can be free. And that's what a rehearsal room is to me. I always imagine it's the womb in a room. Yes. And it's that development, and that has to be safe and it has to be secure. You can't have people feeling scared, because that's not going to get the best out of anybody. It's not going to be the best for the show. So I really have tried to really bring that into my professional work and treat everybody the same. Yeah. Actors, designers, backstage people, and all the same.
It is right, because it can often go, well, one of two ways. Either bullies become bullies, those who are bullied become bullies themselves. And so often there's that spiral, which just keeps going, that horrible, horrible legacy. Or you realize that there can be a better thing. As you know, I'm very actively involved in, I'm vice chair of the variety section in the tennis area for Equity. And Equity talk about safe spaces now, their safe space campaign within that sort of side. It's when you shine a spotlight on the people who have suffered and the devastating effect. And sometimes it can be a poisonous profession. It drives me crazy how badly we treat each other in the profession sometimes. And I think people, whether they're bitchy or jealous or whatever it is, stop and think what's happening, because we've lost people. Not just they've gone through and they're scarred and the scar's gone forever. People have taken their own lives as a result of bullying. And it's so important to shine a spotlight on that. We had on the show very recently, we had a very talented artist called Eborn, who a brilliant singer, inspired by Michael Jackson from an early age, sang and danced and loved all that sort of stuff. His brother took his life at the age of 2009, several years. And 6 years later, Ewood lost his voice and he didn't know why. And he went to a doctor and they explained that actually it was all the stress that had been built up through, which you carried with you, like this massive burden, and suddenly you realize. And in the same way as you with your Facebook post just a couple of days ago, suddenly that tsunami of emotion you've been carrying with you all this time.
Yeah, I would say so.
And I think if we're going to give a message to anybody,
and it has been, what's been really interesting is I never.
I think we've lost you a little bit. We've lost your connection. Are you connected again, Tim? Well, apologies to viewers. I think we have lost the connection. We will be getting Tim back at an appropriate moment. But if you are affected by any of the issues, do feel free to get in touch. Write to guests@octopustv.com and share your experiences. There are people out there who will help, who have been through similar things and similar difficulties. And what we would urge you to do is, if you are being bullied, talk to somebody about it and try to find a way to deal with that. Similarly, if you are bullying or even making flippant remarks to people, stop and think about those consequences, because those consequences go on for years. I'm delighted that Tim's joined us again. I was just wrapping up there, Tim, saying about the consequences, about people, and bullying still carries on. And I was just saying that people who are being bullied should talk to people, because there are others who are in this situation. Absolutely reach out. They can get in touch with a number of people, and there's lots of people that can help. But also those people who are bullying. And bullying comes in many forms. It's sometimes the joke cloak or the dismissive comment or the bitchy comment or the lies behind people's backs, all those sort of things. Stop and think about the devastating consequences, because sometimes it can be years and years and years, in the same way as I talked about Ewood and how that manifests and the stress that he was carrying. The same way that you'd had your tsunami of emotion just a couple of days ago from things which happened ages ago, years and years ago.
Yeah.
Carrying that burden. If people can stop and see and think about the consequences of their actions, hopefully they will stop doing what they're doing and stop bullying people.
Totally agree with you. Just think before you say something or you act in a certain way, you know. And I think bullyingness comes from jealousy. It comes from insecurity in that person. And as you mentioned earlier, you know, like being bullied, you know, if they were bullied, then that's their defense mechanism, or that's the only way they can behave. So yeah, I totally agree. You need to talk to people and don't be embarrassed about it. I think there's also a stigma about that people feel embarrassed about being bullied. Because I think also it's in some people's brain, it's a sense of weakness to be bullied, because you're seen as a not a strong person, you know. And I look back and I was probably, you know, things that I'd been through up until that point, you know, I'd been a strong person. I'd had to cope with things that were out of my control. Losing my dad, you know, that made me grow up, you know, incredibly, you know, with just supporting my mum. So puberty, you know, I look back on it now and there's a list of why I think maybe that's why I was bullied, you know, having something that I was passionate about and other people were still, I don't know what I want to do with my life, whatever, you know, I had an interest.
Well, you were different, and this is what we say. People, whilst we try to celebrate and encourage people being different and your USPs, they actually hate it. They want everybody, they want uniformity, and
they do.
And difference breeds prejudice, which breeds bullying. And jealousy and all those sort of things. It has to stop, because if people could realize the consequences of what they do, having brave people such as yourself and Ewood and others who come forward and say, this is what it's done to me. There are countless of people who don't have, if you like, the opportunity to have a voice to say this is what's doing to me. by watching you and seeing this is what happens, hopefully people will rethink.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Tim, we have so much more to catch up on. We will be bringing you back to talk more about your career, but also about all these issues. Congratulations on your fabulous show. I love it. Your teachers were wrong saying you were untalented, and boy, I'm sure they'll be knocking on your door demanding to come on the show. You can say not 2 minutes, but maybe not this time. It's going to be Tim, an absolute delight. Good luck with the waxer, as in when you're allowed to have a waxer back.
I know. God. Hopefully soon.
It's got to be good. Hair today, gone tomorrow.
Just contend with this big ball of hair.
You're going to be like that little thing, aren't you? That it in the Addams Family in the end.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I see myself as.
Wonderful stuff. Tim, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care. Stay safe, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye. So thank you very much again to Tim McArthur for joining me, and apologies for the connection in these troubled times. Everybody's trying to connect, and connect is what we should be doing. If you are affected by any of the issues, do talk to somebody about it. And if we can save just one life, then this has been of benefit. Candle After is an initiative that I set up a couple of years ago. It's okay not to be okay. I want us to be the generation that talks about mental health and other issues so that the next generation doesn't suffer the stigma. If you are affected by any of the issues, do speak to somebody about it. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have any comments on any of the guests, you can write to me at guests@octopustv.com. That's guests@octopustv.com. You can follow me at Andrew Eborn at octopustv, and don't forget to subscribe on all the usual channels. But for me, for now, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you again to Tim, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.